The restaurant smelled of roasted garlic and fresh bread that evening, the kind of scent that made tired businessmen loosen their ties and smile after a long day. I was one of them, except I wasn't really there for the food. My name is Noman, and I was sitting in the corner booth of the Imperial Flame, a 5-star restaurant that my company secretly owned. I was there undercover, dressed in a simple black shirt and jeans, just observing. It was something I often did. I liked to see how my staff treated people when they didn't know the CEO was watching. I had built my empire from scratch. I knew what it felt like to be invisible, underestimated, and humiliated. That's why I never announced who I was when I visited my own places. But that night, something happened that would change everything. Across the room, I noticed a young woman balancing 2 trays, each piled with dishes and glasses. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes, they had a quiet determination. I could tell she wasn't just a waitress doing a shift, she was surviving. Her name tag read, Sohana. She smiled at every customer, even the rude ones, the kind who snapped their fingers and treated her like she was less than human. And she kept whispering, "Thank you, sir," or "Sorry for the wait," with that same soft tone, as if her dignity depended on staying gentle. But not everyone had mercy that night. A loud clink broke the calm. A wine glass shattered on the floor. Everyone turned. Sohana froze, her eyes wide, hands shaking. The red wine had splashed across a man's expensive gray suit, an arrogant executive type, sitting with his friends, all of them laughing too loud, too proud. "What did you just do?" the man barked, rising from his chair. His voice was sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. I'm so sorry, sir. It slipped. He didn't let her finish. He shoved the table aside, his face red with rage. "You stupid girl! Do you know how much this suit costs?" Everyone watched in silence. The manager stood frozen, terrified of the man's influence. No one moved, except me. Before I could stand, he kicked the tray from her hands. Plates crashed, soup spilled, and she fell backward, hitting the floor. Her wrist twisted under her, and she gasped in pain. Then she whispered, voice trembling, "Please, don't kick me. I'm already hurt." Something inside me snapped. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping against the marble floor. The man turned toward me, furious. "What are you looking at?" he snarled. I looked at Sohana first, tears rolling down her cheeks, trying to gather the broken dishes as if she was the one who should be sorry. Then I looked back at him. Calm, controlled. But every word came from somewhere deeper than anger. "I think," I said quietly, "you should apologize to her." The man laughed. "And who do you think you are?" I smiled faintly. "You'll find out soon enough." The restaurant had fallen completely silent. Even the sound of the city outside, the horns, the chatter, the rain tapping against the glass, felt like it had stopped just to see what would happen next. The man towering above Sohana straightened his tie and sneered at me. "You think you can talk to me like that? Do you even know who I am?" I stepped closer, my hands still in my pockets. "No," I said calmly. "But from what I just saw, I know exactly what kind of man you are." He clenched his fists. "Watch your mouth, stranger." But before he could say more, Sohana whispered from the floor, "Sir, please don't fight. I'll clean it up. It was my fault." Her voice was broken, fragile. Her hand was bleeding from a cut glass shard, but she tried to hide it, tucking it behind her apron. Something about that broke me more than anything. A person that gentle shouldn't have to beg for respect. The man laughed again and turned toward his table of friends. "See this? This is what happens when you hire trash. I'll make sure she's fired by morning." His words hit her harder than the kick. That's when I finally dropped my calm. I stepped between them. "You're not going to touch her again," I said, my tone sharper now. "And if you think you're firing anyone tonight, you'll need my signature first." He frowned, confused. "Your signature? Who the hell are you?" Before I could answer, the restaurant manager ran up, sweating and nervous. Sir, please, don't cause a scene, please. I cut him off. No, Mr. Farouk, let him talk. I want to hear how he plans to treat my staff. Everyone's eyes widened. The whisper rippled through the crowd. Your staff? Someone muttered from another table. Sohana looked up, dazed. Your staff? The man's face went pale. Wait, what do you mean, your staff? I took out my wallet and placed my black executive card on the table beside him. The golden logo of Noman Group Holdings gleamed under the chandelier light. The Imperial Flame, I said evenly, is one of my restaurants. You could hear the gasp roll across the room. The man stepped back. His arrogance vanished instantly. Sir, I had no idea. I know, I interrupted. That's the problem. Sohana tried to stand, but she winced, clutching her ankle. I knelt beside her gently, ignoring the crowd and the man's awkward apologies. It's okay, I said softly. Don't move. Let me help you. Her eyes met mine for the first time. They were full of pain and confusion. You're the owner? I smiled faintly. Something like that. I took out my phone and called the restaurant security head. Take this man out, I said coldly, and blacklist him from every one of our branches. I never want him near our staff again. The man started to protest, but 2 guards were already at his shoulders, and as he was escorted out, the entire restaurant broke into quiet applause, hesitant at first, then stronger. But Sohana, she didn't smile. She just looked down at the floor, whispering, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble. When I realized this wasn't the first time she'd been treated like that. And it probably wasn't the first time she'd had to apologize for someone else's cruelty. As I helped her sit at an empty table, I said gently, You don't need to apologize. Not tonight. Not ever again. But behind her calm eyes, I could sense a deeper story. A pain that went beyond a broken wrist or a rough night at work. Something had hurt her long before this evening, and I was about to find out what. After the chaos, the restaurant slowly returned to its quiet rhythm. But the laughter and clinking of glasses no longer felt the same. Something had shifted, not just in the air, but inside me too. Sohana sat silently at the corner table, her hand wrapped in a napkin I'd folded around her bleeding palm. Her eyes were distant, staring at nothing in particular. She looked like someone who'd learned to survive by pretending not to exist. I sat across from her. You should get that hand checked by a doctor, I said softly. She shook her head. No, it's fine, sir. I can still work. Please don't deduct anything from my pay. Her words pierced through me like a knife. That's what she was worried about. Her paycheck. Not her pain, not her dignity. Just her survival. I took a deep breath. Sohana, no one's cutting your pay. You didn't do anything wrong. She looked up at me then, confused. But the customer was wrong, I interrupted gently. And people like him think they can buy power by humiliating others. But not here. Not while I'm around. Her eyes glistened, but she quickly looked away, hiding her emotions behind that quiet, professional mask waitresses are forced to wear. I'd seen that look before, years ago, in the mirror of my own past. After a few minutes, she spoke again, barely above a whisper. Sir, why did you step in? You could have ignored it like everyone else. I smiled faintly. Because I've been where you are. She blinked, unsure what I meant. I used to be a janitor, I continued, in a hotel not far from here. I was yelled at, insulted, even kicked once because I accidentally spilled coffee on a businessman's shoes. No one stood up for me either. That day I promised myself if I ever became someone with power, I'd never let people like that destroy others. Sohana stared at me in disbelief. You? A janitor? I nodded. Yes. Every CEO has a story before the title. For a moment her lips trembled. She wanted to say something, but her pride held her back. Then quietly she whispered, I used to be someone too. I frowned gently. What do you mean? She looked down, her voice fragile. I wasn't always serving food. I was studying nursing, top of my class. But when my father fell sick, I dropped out to take care of him. After he passed, debts took everything. This job was all I could find. Her eyes shimmered as she spoke, but she didn't cry. She'd already cried all her tears long ago. I leaned forward slightly. You did the right thing, Sohana. Taking care of your father wasn't weakness. It was love. That's something no degree can teach. She looked at me, surprised by the gentleness in my tone. For a second, I saw a faint smile touch her lips. But then, something else crossed her face. Fear. She glanced around nervously, then whispered, Sir, please don't tell the manager about this. If he finds out I distracted you, he might what? I asked softly. She hesitated. He might cut my shifts again. I already owe him money. My expression hardened. You owe him money? She nodded slowly. He lends it to the staff, but takes double back from our tips. I had no choice. Now it all made sense. The exhaustion in her eyes, the bruises on her wrist that didn't come from tonight. My heart burned with anger, but I kept my voice steady. Don't worry, Sohana. You won't owe him, or anyone, anything after tonight. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? I smiled faintly. You'll see. That night, as she left the restaurant, I watched her walk through the drizzle, her white blouse clinging to her shoulders, her steps tired yet graceful. I stood by the window, staring at the city lights reflecting off the glass, and whispered to myself, tomorrow, everything changes for her. And I meant it. The next morning, I couldn't shake the image of Sohana out of my mind. Her soft thank you, her wounded eyes, that quiet pride she still carried despite everything life had stolen from her. I had spent my whole life building businesses, rescuing failing companies, and multiplying wealth. But that night, something different had stirred inside me. I didn't just want to help her as a boss. I wanted to understand her as a person. So I went back to the restaurant. Not as the CEO, just Noman, the man in a plain shirt, watching from a corner table again. Sohana was already there. Her hand was bandaged, but she was working, pretending the pain didn't exist. Every time she smiled at a customer, it felt like she was fighting an invisible war inside herself. When the rush slowed, I quietly called the restaurant manager, Farouk, into my office upstairs. He entered nervously, still unaware I knew everything. Sir, good morning, he said, forcing a smile. I folded my arms. Morning, Mr. Farouk. I heard something disturbing last night, about staff debts. His eyes darted away instantly. Oh, sir, it's nothing serious. Just small advances the waiters request sometimes. Double interest? I said coldly. Taking their tips? Is that part of our company policy too? He froze, his throat tightening. Sir, I just save it. I cut him off. From today, every single rupee you've taken from them will be returned, and you're suspended until further notice. His face went pale. Sir, please. I'm done hearing excuses, I said, turning away. You forgot that leadership is about people, not power. Leave your keys on the table. As he left, his footsteps echoed in silence. I picked up the intercom. Call Miss Sohana to my office, I said quietly. A few minutes later, she walked in hesitantly, holding her apron in both hands. Sir, you called me? Yes, Sohana, please sit. She sat down slowly, unsure why she was there. I smiled. I wanted to talk about what happened last night, and something else. Her eyes widened a little, nervous. Sir, if it's about Mr. Farouk, please. I didn't mean to get him in trouble. You didn't, I interrupted softly. He got himself in trouble. You just told the truth. She blinked, silent for a moment. Then she whispered, Truth doesn't always help poor people, sir. Her words hit deeper than she knew. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the desk. Sohana, what if I told you that your truth is exactly what can change your life? She frowned. What do you mean? I've seen you, I said. How you work, how you treat everyone with respect, even when they don't deserve it. You remind me why I started all this in the first place. She looked completely confused. Started what? I smiled faintly. This restaurant chain, this company, everything. Her eyes widened. You're really the owner? I nodded. Yes. And last night you taught me something I'd forgotten. Kindness still exists, even in pain. She was speechless. Her fingers gripped the edge of the chair as if trying to process what she'd just heard. Then I said, Sohana, I want you to stop working as a waitress. Her face fell instantly. Sir, please don't fire me. I need this job. I'll work harder. I raised a hand gently. I'm not firing you. I'm promoting you. She froze. Promoting me? I nodded. From today you'll be joining the administrative team. A full-time assistant position at our head office. Better pay. Flexible hours. Tears welled up in her eyes. Sir, I don't know what to say. Just say yes, I said, smiling. She covered her face for a second, her shoulders trembling. Then she whispered, Thank you, sir. No one's ever believed in me like this before. But before she could leave, I noticed something. A small photograph had fallen from her apron pocket. A man in a hospital bed, smiling faintly. I picked it up. Is this your father? Her eyes widened. She quickly grabbed the photo and nodded. Yes, he's still in the hospital. The debts were for his medicine. Something inside me softened even more. Which hospital? I asked gently. She hesitated, then told me. I looked at her with quiet determination. Sohana, go home early today. Rest. I'll visit your father myself tomorrow. Her eyes widened. Sir, you don't have to. I want to, I said simply. That night, as I drove home, the city lights blurred past my window. I couldn't stop thinking about her, about how a woman with so little could still carry so much grace. And as rain began to fall again, I whispered to myself, maybe she's the reminder I needed. But I didn't know. By visiting her father the next day, I was about to uncover something shocking, something that would connect our lives in a way I never expected. The next morning, the sky was heavy with rain. I drove across the city toward a small government hospital Sohana had mentioned the night before. It wasn't one of those fancy, well-lit places I usually donated to. It was the kind of hospital where pain had a smell and silence carried stories of struggle. I walked through the crowded corridor, nurses rushing past with trays, the echo of distant coughs blending with the soft hum of machines. When I finally reached Ward 17, I saw him, a thin man in his 50s, lying on a narrow bed near the window, an oxygen tube resting under his nose. His eyes were half open, watching the rain slide down the glass pane. Mr. Imtiaz? I asked softly. He turned his head slowly, a faint smile on his pale lips. Yes. Who are you, son? I'm a friend of your daughter, Sohana, I said gently. At the mention of her name, his eyes brightened a little. My girl. She works too much. Always tired. But she smiles for me every time she visits. Says everything's fine, even when it isn't. His voice trembled with pride and pain. I sat beside him. She told me how you raised her alone. He chuckled weakly. Yes, after her mother passed, she became my reason to live. I tried to give her a good life, but life had other plans. Then he turned to look at me fully. His gaze was sharp now, knowing. You're not just her friend, are you? I was caught off guard. What do you mean? He smiled faintly. I was a manager once before my health failed. I know when a man looks at someone with respect. And when he looks with something more, I couldn't help but smile. Maybe both, I admitted quietly. He closed his eyes, the rain reflecting across his tired face. She deserves a man who sees her heart, not her uniform. Promise me something, son. Don't let her break the way life broke me. His words hit deeper than I expected. I nodded. You have my word, sir. Just then the door opened. Sohana stepped in, holding a paper bag of fruit and medicine. The moment she saw me sitting there, she froze. Sir, what are you doing here? She asked softly, both surprised and embarrassed. I smiled. I came to check on your father. He's quite a storyteller. Her cheeks flushed pink as she glanced at her father. Baba, you didn't. Oh, I told him everything. Mr. Imtiaz laughed weakly. And I told him to marry you if he's serious. Baba! She gasped, covering her face, and for the first time I heard her laugh. A real laugh, unguarded and pure. The sound of it stayed with me. After we left the hospital, I offered her a ride. The rain had turned into a storm, the kind that makes the city glow like glass. Inside the car, the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy with unspoken gratitude. At a red light, she finally spoke. Sir, I don't know how to thank you. You've done too much already. You don't have to, I said softly. Just promise me one thing. What? Don't let the world convince you that you're small. People like you are the reason people like me still believe in kindness. She looked at me, her eyes shimmering. You talk like you understand pain. I do, I whispered. More than you think. We reached her small apartment building. She hesitated before stepping out. Then, with a shy smile, she said, Sir, can I ask you something? Of course. She bit her lip nervously. Why did you defend me that night? You didn't even know me. I looked into her eyes and said, Because when I saw you on that floor, I saw someone I used to be. Someone who didn't deserve to be broken. She stood there in the rain, silent, the city lights flickering behind her. Then she whispered, You didn't just save me, sir. You reminded me that good people still exist. Her words lingered long after she walked away. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her laughter, her strength, the way she carried her scars like invisible armor. I realized it wasn't just pity or kindness pulling me toward her. It was something far deeper, something I hadn't felt in years. But just as I was about to close my eyes, my phone buzzed. It was a message from the hospital. Patient Imtiaz Ahmed, condition critical, immediate attention required. My heart stopped. Without a second thought, I grabbed my keys and ran into the storm. The rain hadn't stopped. It poured down in relentless sheets as I sped through the empty roads, my heart pounding harder than the thunder outside. By the time I reached the hospital, the corridors were a blur of nurses, rushing feet, and the sharp scent of antiseptic. I ran straight toward 17, where I'd seen Sohana's father smiling just hours ago. But now, the bed was surrounded by doctors. Machines beeped frantically, a nurse shouted for oxygen, and in the middle of it all stood Sohana, her hands trembling, tears pouring down her face. Baba, please stay with me, she cried, holding his hand. I froze at the doorway, my chest tightening painfully. I walked closer, my shoes echoing softly on the floor. She didn't notice me at first. Her entire world was in that one fragile heartbeat on the monitor. And then, the sound faded. A long, steady tone filled the air. No, no, Baba, please. Her cries broke something inside me. The doctors tried, but within minutes, they stepped back, heads bowed. I'm sorry, one of them whispered. Sohana's body shook as she clung to her father's chest, whispering prayers through tears. I knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Sohana, She turned to me, her face pale, her eyes lost. He's gone. He was all I had. I didn't speak. Words meant nothing at that moment. I just held her as she broke down, her tears soaking through my shirt. Hours passed before the ward was quiet again. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching her father's photograph. "I worked every night so he could get better," she whispered. "And still, I couldn't save him." I looked at her, eyes heavy. "You gave him something no doctor could. Love, peace, a reason to fight." She turned toward me slowly, her voice trembling. "Why are you being so kind to me, Noman?" For the first time, she used my name, and for the first time, I didn't hide behind silence. "Because I know what it's like," I said softly. "To lose someone, to keep living when your heart doesn't want to." Her tears flowed again, but this time she didn't look away. I held her hand gently and whispered, "You're not alone anymore." Over the next few weeks, I handled everything. Her father's hospital bills, the funeral, even the debts that had chained her for years. I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because somewhere between her pain and her courage, she had become the one thing my money couldn't buy: peace. When I offered her time off, she refused. "If I stay home, I'll drown in memories," she said softly. "I'd rather work." So she joined me at the head office, and every morning I'd see her at her desk, quiet, but stronger. She had the kind of grace that made even the toughest meetings feel human again. One evening, as everyone left, she came to my office with a small box. "Sir," she said softly, "this is for you." Inside was her father's old fountain pen. He used to say, "Give this to the man who helped you when I couldn't." Her voice cracked. "That man is you." I held the pen like it was made of glass. "Sohana, you don't have to thank me." She smiled faintly. "I'm not thanking you. I'm trusting you." Our eyes met, and in that silent gaze, something unspoken finally became real. Months passed. Together, we rebuilt her life, not with charity, but with purpose. She finished her nursing degree part-time while helping me lead a foundation we started in her father's name. And one spring evening, under the golden sunset pouring through the office windows, I looked at her and said, "Sohana, that night in the restaurant, when you cried and said, 'Please don't kick me, I'm already hurt,' I never told you what I thought." She tilted her head slightly. "What did you think?" I smiled softly. "That one day the world would kneel to your kindness, not your pain." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but this time they were not from sorrow. As the sun disappeared behind the skyline, she whispered, "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible." And I replied, "No, Sohana. Thank you for reminding me that love is the only power that never humiliates." She smiled, the kind of smile that heals old wounds, and as the city lights flickered on, I knew that night in the restaurant wasn't fate, it was grace. The end.